All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another deep dive. You know how this works. We take something that the listeners send in, something that you're interested in, and we try to uncover its hidden depths.
Yeah, exactly, like an archaeological dig.
And today's dig site is, well, it's a podcast episode you sent in. It's called Expecting God's Best for Your Future Marriage.
Okay.
Now, I've got to say, the title itself really grabbed me. Just think about it. Expecting the best for your future marriage. That's like setting the bar high right from the start, don't you think? And, the podcast calls its listeners sunshine seekers, which is a little detail, but I kind of love it.
Oh, I totally agree. It's like right away you feel this sense of hope and optimism just from the name Sunshine Seekers, and I think that's a really good foundation for this kind of topic.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to dive into today, the whole idea of faith and finding a partner and how those two things intertwine. So what else stood out to you about this episode as you were listening?
Well, right off the bat, they use this thing called a ball of reflection, and I thought that was pretty clever.
The ball of reflection. Yeah, what's that all about?
Well, basically, they ask the listener to imagine like a crystal ball and to see their future marriage reflected in it. It's like a way to get you thinking about your hopes and dreams for that relationship, what you really want out of it.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like setting an intention, right? Like visualizing what you want your future to look like with that special someone.
Exactly. And that ties in really well with the whole idea of faith, right? Because it's about believing that God has a plan for you and trusting that he'll bring the right person into your life.
Yeah, and that's where that farm analogy comes in, right? The one they talk about in the episode.
Oh, yeah, the farm analogy, that's a good one. They talk about planting seeds, nurturing them, and then patiently waiting for them to grow.
So it's like a metaphor for the whole process of finding a spouse,
Hmm.
right? You're putting in the work, you're preparing your heart, and then you have to trust that God will make things happen in his time.
Right, and that's not always easy, is it? Waiting, patience isn't exactly our strong suit as humans.
Definitely not. We want things like now, right?
Yeah.
But the podcast really emphasizes that waiting is part of the process. And it's not just about sitting around twiddling your thumbs. It's about actively preparing yourself, becoming the best version of you that you can be.
Absolutely, and I think that's such a key point. Often we think of waiting as this passive thing, but in reality, active waiting is about growth. It's about using that time to work on yourself, to deepen your faith, to become more self-aware, all those things that'll make you a better partner when the time is right.
And that's where those Bible verses they mentioned come in, right? They provide this sort of like a foundation for the whole idea of trusting God's timing.
Yeah, exactly. They start off with Numbers 23.19, which is a great reminder that God's promises are true and he doesn't go back on his word.
He always keeps his promises right. And he says he has a plan for you, then he does.
Exactly. And then they go on to Deuteronomy 7.9, which talks about God's faithfulness extending to generations. It's not just about you, it's about the legacy of faith and commitment that you're carrying forward.
Wow. That's pretty powerful to think about, that you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Totally. And I think that can be really comforting, especially when you're in that waiting period, It's like, even if things feel uncertain right now, God's faithfulness is something you can always count on.
And even when you're doubting that faithfulness.
Yeah.
Right? There's that other verse they mentioned, 2 Timothy 2.13.
Ah, yes, that one's a good one.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even when we're unfaithful, even when we doubt God remains faithful, he never changes his mind about us.
That's so reassuring, especially when you're feeling like maybe God's forgotten about you, or maybe you've messed things up so badly that he's given up on your love life.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been there. Those moments of doubt are so real, but this verse is like a lifeline. It's saying, hey, even if you're struggling, God's still got you.
And then they bring in that quote from 1 Thessalonians 5.24.
Yes. He who calls you is faithful, and he also will do it.
Talk about powerful, right?
Right. Like, there's no room for doubt there. It's a statement of fact. God is faithful. He'll make it happen.
It gives you this sense of peace and certainty in the midst of all the uncertainty of dating and relationships.
Exactly. And then to kind of bring it all home, they share a personal testimony, right? From someone who's actually experienced this whole thing of waiting for God's best.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because it's one thing to hear about these concepts in a general way, but it's another to hear a real-life story of how it played out for someone else.
Right. It makes it so much more tangible and relatable,
Mm-hmm.
And even though the specifics of their story might be different from yours, the underlying message is universal. It's about trusting God's plan over our own and finding joy in his perfect timing.
And you know what else they do that I thought was really interesting is they have that call to action at the end where they encourage listeners to subscribe and share the podcast.
Yeah, I noticed that too. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it speaks to the importance of community, right? They're not just trying to get more downloads. They're trying to build a community of people who are all on this same journey of seeking God's best for their future marriages.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like they're saying, hey, we're all in this together. Let's support each other. Let's encourage each other.
Exactly. And I think that's so important because, let's face it, dating can be tough and it can be really lonely sometimes. But knowing that you're not alone, that there are other people out there who are going through the same things, that can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Community is such a vital part of the Christian faith, and I think it plays a huge role in navigating the ups and downs of finding a spouse.
So to wrap things up, it seems like the core message of this podcast is that finding a spouse is not just about chance or luck. It's about faith, patience, and trusting in God's timing.
And it's about actively preparing yourself to be the best partner you can be while you wait.
Absolutely. And for those of you listening, I want to leave you with this question. How do you think this perspective, this idea of letting God lead the way, might change the way you approach dating and relationships? Something to think about, right?
Definitely food for thought.
So keep seeking, keep exploring, and as always, keep diving deep into the things that matter most to you. Until next time.
See ya.